Okay, we're going to get started with How Goes the Hour. Willie Flowers here with you. We've got some action packed guests coming on today. We're dealing with this whole issue locally and in our branches with what public education is going to look out like moving forward. We know there was an attack on public education by conservatives. It played out in Virginia, and they want a big everything in Virginia because of a lack of attention by, I would say, Democratic leaders, local leaders to issues of schools. Conservatives used every piece of how to shatter some dreams around this issue of a mask, a no mask, this issue of talking about critical race theory. They use these wedge issues to turn out the vote. And my theory is that they're doing it in the country, and Maryland is no different. Luckily, we have in the NAACP a, a significant lineup of individuals who are running for school board in several counties. We're talking about Howard County, talking about Calvert County, Washington County. We have two members of the NAACP running in Baltimore City and also Charles County. And I wanted to pull them into this conversation to get an idea of their vision and how they plan to win their elections. As always, we like to talk about national and international news, but more importantly, national news at this point. Um, and everybody's talking about the turnover of Roe v. Wade, which was the beginning of the week, and the end of the week we had the swearing in of our new justice, who made history by being the first African American female to be sworn in as a Supreme Court justice, and Ketanji Brown Jackson. And so she made history. We're excited about that. But from the numbers, the way the numbers have fallen out, we're going to have some challenges moving forward. And it made me think about how we got here with the Supreme Court. And it's ironic that in the last couple of years, people have criticized Ruth Bader Ginsburg because she didn't resign so that they could, select the right um, person, Democrat in this case. And it's also the case that these games that the Republicans played with President Obama, because he should have had three nominees, but he only had two. And but it made me think about how we got here from the beginning, because on the back end of this, we had Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who didn't resign, and the one theory is that she wanted to retire when Hillary Clinton was elected president, but Hillary Clinton didn't get elected president, so we have that to deal with, and she unfortunately died a few months before Trump's term was over, but what people forget about, and this is a conversation we got to have about the disunity that I see in the Democratic Party, was in 1991, I think it was, when Chief Justice Thurgood Marshall decided to just resign or retire. But he retired, he said he was tired, and, he was an older gentleman. But the reality was that he didn't see the Democrats winning the 1992 election. And it was only because of the popularity of George Herbert Walker Bush at the time, President George Herbert Walker Bush at the same time, and his success in the Middle East. I think it was called Desert Storm. And, everybody thought the wind was at his back. And if Justice Thurgood Marshall would have held on in there and had confidence in the Democratic Party, we would have had that nomination, and we would have never heard of Clarence Thomas, because he died, I think, 4 or 5 days after Clinton was sworn in. And the first, in this case, Clinton had the opportunity of a nomination, and the rest is history. But that's how it played out. We get Clarence Thomas. We also get Clarence Thomas, who was a swing vote on the 2000 election. When we talk about Bush It was a Gore versus Bush that determined the results of the 2000 election, and you get everything else after that. You know, um, George W. Bush should have never been elected. He would not have had appointments. And what we end with is a reality in this world of politics, that we have six conservatives versus three Democrats. And the irony in those six conservatives is that all of those conservatives that voted against Roe were appointed by the two Bushes and Donald Trump, who publicly hate each other. Like the Bushes and the Trumps hate each other, but there are people stuck with their vote. And because they say that, they say Democrats fall in love and Republicans fall in line. And that's the greatest display of that imaginable. So, Democrats, we got to get our stuff together. But today we're not talking about Democrats as much as we're talking about the attack on schools and the people we have who are stepping up to the plate in the NAACP to do something about it. We have I'm going to pull in two people to kind of tee it off. We have Jackie McCoy out of Howard County. We have he calls himself Chairman Fred Chavis. I guess we want to say Fred Hampton, um, out of um, out of Washington County. And then we have Camille Khaleesi, who's in Calvert County, Eugene Johnson, Baltimore City, and C.D. Witherspoon out of Baltimore City. Hopefully, we'll have Jason Henry out of Charles County. I'm going to pull them in now. How you doing, Miss Jackie McCoy, the
Doing
chair of
well.
the board? You got Malcolm X on, and Fred
Peace,
Hampton
everybody.
too.
Peace.
We taking this to another level. What? What? So here we are. I mean, y'all done filed. You didn't you prepared to take your case to the people. First of all, I'm very proud of both of y'all for stepping up to the place that is needed, it's necessary. And ironically or coincidentally, in this case, we got two teachers who are running for two former teachers who are running for school board. So you would hope that you know the insides of it and you really know how to tackle the issues. So I want to give both of you an opportunity to kind of frame your the discussion around why you ran, why you decided to run, and what you plan to do. We can tee it off to the first lady who came on board, Miss Jackie McCoy.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Are you able to hear me?
And let me introduce Miss Jackie. Yeah, we can. Yeah, let me introduce her real quick because she is a tough sister, and we need that. We definitely need that in Howard County. But more importantly, she's worked in the industry. Like I said, she has been a teacher. She's an engineer. They call her the real McCoy for a reason, and she's also a gardener. We met in the garden, and she knows how to do that skill. And she decided to run for public office. So the best seeds to plant are the young people, and she decided to do that.
Thank you, Willie. So I
Can we?
can you hear me? Okay. All right. We're
Yes.
ready? Okay. I chose to run not because I necessarily um, wanted to run, but when I looked at the slate of candidates and I realized that not one of them was an educator, and I looked at where we are today with education and the attack on education, and I realized that there was no one in the race who could honestly speak to issues from a position of experience. And so I thought, my goodness. And then when I looked at the fact that it was an at-large, there are two at-large seats, which means that we will cover the entire county and not just be district representatives. I feel that the district representative format causes people to fight rather than collaborate and work together. And so when I looked at the fact that it was an at-large seat and the fact that school boards were being targeted by the extremists, as ways to wedge their issues into curriculum, into the policies and practices in schools. I said I could not sit by. I do workshops on the brain science of bias and on how we became so divided as a nation. And at the end of one of the workshops, I said, well, what's your sacrifice? And when I realized that I had the tools and I had the skills to be able to bring to the board that would really help in the decision making, I could not sit back, and I realized that would be my sacrifice. And so that's why I stepped up. As far as what I bring, I believe that part of the issues that we're having is the adults have decided to use the Board of Ed to press their issues instead of really centering on the children and the needs of the children and how we can help families help their children. And so they've gotten lost in the whole back and forth. And so I think I bring a voice of reason to say, no matter what decision you make, the bottom line is, how does it impact the children? How will we educate the children? Not will our issue be front and center, but will the children benefit? Will their education be paramount? And will we make sure that we are preparing the world for the future adults who will make decisions and make reasoned decisions? And that's where I am. It's centering the children, nothing else. Families, yes. The parents need to know what's being taught so they can help their children to better learn the things that they need to learn, and have a partnership rather than an adversarial relationship between educators and the school system and the parents and the families. So that's why I'm in it. And as you said, I'm pretty tough. I won't be pushed around, and people are trying to push me into a cookie cutter, and I'm not going to be pushed. I believe in equity. I believe in equity on every level, not just equity racially. And so I'm going to be advocating for everyone, but no one's going to try to force me into being something that I'm not. I think I'm fair. I think I'm reasoned. As an engineer, I bring a mindset of problem solving. And if you're not about problem solving, I really don't want to hear it. If your thing is just to be, fighting back and forth and trying to, go to the next level in your political career, I'm not going to be with you. I'm for the children. That's the bottom line. That's it.
All right. Thank you for your intro. The chairman of the board, Chairman Fred Chavis.
Yeah, peace, everybody. So again, I'm Fred Chavis. I'm the president of the Washington County NAACP. I'm former educator. Me and my wife also own our own nonprofit Liberation, and I'm running for Board of Education. I have to say, I did not want to run for Board of Education. Actually, did not want to run for any kind of office, period. But once I began teaching and I got really involved in the community, you started recognizing the need of what was going on. You started seeing a current board that wasn't really serving all of the students, didn't have their best interests, and that also included teachers. We have a very diverse group of students, but the teachers don't match that diversity. And so for many of my students, I was the first Black man that was literally teaching them. My wife is also a teacher. She was the Black woman that was teaching them. And so both of us ended up on the same hallway in the same school. And it made such a difference just for our students to see that real representation. And what I've always taught my kids is to literally grow without barriers. And I try to live that by example. And so I ran because I felt it was just necessary to show the kids this Black man that is running and fighting for them, that's trying to provide these opportunities for them. And I have to say, in Washington County, man, all you hear is politics. You either Republican or you Democrat, and then it gets into money. I don't care about any of that. Nobody saved my life because I was a certain party. Nobody saved my life because of, how much money I had. This is just about the work in the trenches. We believe boots on the ground, basically. And so, we're running against opposition that literally, I'm not going to say they're just ignorant, because I think it's purposeful misinformation that's being spread. but I think that they're taking advantage of the ignorance that may be out in the communities in regards to, you hear things like, as soon as you say equity, all of a sudden we're talking about critical race theory, and we're trying to make the other population feel bad, about what's going on. No, this is a part of school. This is a part of education. But the other thing is, we're talking about K through 12. There's a certain level of things they're learning and things they're not. But most of the people, they're not involved in education, so they don't actually know, but they want to spread that. And it becomes these, moments of attack. And that's what I've been facing as this Black man that's running for Board of Education, is just literally the attacks. I'm extreme. I showed up with the Malcolm X stuff on purpose because I don't back down. But also, I need people to recognize that I'm representing all of our students. And I've always told my kids, I recognize the diversity in our classroom. And that's what I respect. That's what we appreciate, because when that's able to come together, learn together, speak together, grow together, that's what makes us better. And so I want my voice to be heard on the Board of Education, because I want to be able to represent all of our students. And trust me, I'm willing to combat any force that wants to get in the way of us liberating our youth. And that's why, like I said, I'm running for that, and I'm maintaining NAACP, but we'll do whatever we have to do in our community to make sure that all of our youth gets what they need, equitable, and that they have the options to succeed in this world and not be a part of the system going in that circle.
All right. All right. Thank you. We have the one and only Michael Eugene Johnson out of Northwestern High School, right?
Yeah, a couple years ago.
He comes from, I know what year it was, because every time you say it, I think I was one. You're 1971 and 72.
No, I'm 74.
Can you, which one?
74. Can you hear me?
74?
It says yes.
Okay,
yes.
okay. I thought it was, so I was 3.
My hair is gray and it's short. And when it's short, that European come out. But when it gets longer, then the curls and the brothers come out of it. But I just thank you, if I can, Willie. Thanks for giving me an opportunity. Jackie, I've been following your campaign. Chairman, I'm just getting an opportunity to meet you, Chairman Chavis, and Jason, my brother. How you been? And, the difference here in Baltimore is that in 183 years, we haven't had an election for a school board at all. And then when we went to Annapolis, and NAACP was well involved, and a lot of us were involved to get 2 seats, we had pushback. And the way they decided was, well, we're not going to reduce the appointments. We're just going to add 2 more seats. And that's why we're at 12. Now, there is a conversation that we're having about adding 4 more, not 4 more additional seats, but 4 more elected seats, based on the fact that the next mayoralty election, we try to get it this year, but it's election year. And for a lot of reasons, our politicians are cowards. So they don't move like that. I have been a public school graduate. I'm the youngest of 11. All of my brothers and sisters went through Baltimore City Public Schools. My daughter is a graduate of Baltimore City Public Schools, and she's now a leader, a principal in one of these classes. But I also recognize the fact that all of the positions was always appointed. And I paid attention over the last couple of years as we were pondering this. And like Chairman Fred, like Jackie, I had no idea I was going to run. I'm around the table saying, yeah, we need to do this and we need to do that. And then I realized that, no, we need you to do this. And I was an educator for 14 years. I get it. But one thing that we are not doing is that we are now trying to produce average schools for our extraordinary children. All of our children are the brightest people on earth if you give them the reason to be bright. But you don't give them that reason. You want average. Now, I was an average student in school. The only time I saw an A was in my name. But I understand and I get it, what we got now. We have my 2 grandkids are some of the smartest kids I've ever seen. But my daughter's involved, the community's involved in making sure that they're moving forward. Like Chairman Fred was saying, and I love saying that, like Chairman Fred was saying, they've been pigeonholing me. I'm supposed to be the angry black man. But the thing is I'm Albert and Kiwi Johnson's baby boy. All of that angry stuff, about time it got down to the 11th child, I'm cool. You know, as some people say, I can give an Eskimo a cold by walking by him. So I'm not really worrying about that. I think what we're looking at is there are people who would not want Jackie, Fred, and myself to be on the board, because then it's not business as usual. People are making money off of the grief of our children. Here we are in Baltimore City, and yet we've had, as you know, well, we've had 7 black school board members. I mean, black superintendents or CEOs. Now our kids are commodities. They're not students. That's what we call them, CEOs. But out of that, it's the school board that I wanted everybody to pay attention to, because the superintendents are just employees. But the school board is the one that makes the policies. They make the curriculum and all of those things. My sister-in-law, Jackie may know her, Ramona Johnson, was a school board member in Baltimore County. And she left on her own accord. They were trying to reappoint. But one thing that I want to say in closing is that, like Chairman Fred and Jackie say, is that, you know, anybody can step out. You know, they didn't have to wait for us. You know, but not to have the support at times from people when everybody knows that Baltimore City is the 24th ranked of the 24th municipality in the state of Maryland. That's where we're ranked. And poor Prince George's County, rich Prince George's County is right above us. And now we got to keep an eye on the Baltimore County schools, because the African-American school scores and things are starting to fluctuate in the wrong direction. So what I'm in the race is, you know, sometimes, Jackie, we have to be the disruptor. You know, sometimes it got to be the person to stand on the table. And it's got to be the one that says, no, I just don't think this is something we can do. And so my admission into this is to bring the community with me, because by being one of the 2 who would be voted in, then I got the community with me. And if we can get the community to recognize that they own the schools, they own the system, they own all of this, and I saw Chairman Fred and Jackie agree when Chairman Fred was talking about the complexity of the teachers in our school system. I mean, there are enough more white women in the school system in Baltimore City. That's who's teaching our black boys. That's who's teaching, and young principals, even though my daughter's a young principal. She know I'll say that anyway. But at the end of the day, we are the change agents. And if we need to get in this year, because I need to call Jackie. I need to call Chairman Fred. I need to say we need to pile everybody in buses and vans and go down to Annapolis, not necessarily about more cash, because let me tell you, Baltimore City public school system is cash rich. Don't let nobody tell you that. They got a ton of money. I was really surprised. I know I'm holding up the mic too long, but I was really, really surprised how much money Mervo gets per year. $17 million. One trade school. And they're working on 1950 gas-powered engines. And in Bethesda, Maryland, they're working with Teslas. I'm just saying. So thank you, Willie, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, Jackie and Chairman Fred, for being patient on my rambling. And Jason, I think you probably heard it a few times, so I appreciate you being kind with being patient with me, guys.
All right. Thank you, sir. So, Brother Jason, I just got some news out of the Washington Post that said that it's no longer Prince George's County that has the most black folks in it anymore, most affluent, however they put it, black folks. But it's still the case that even though Prince George's County had that title for years, they don't have the best. You know, so it's a lot of changes going to be happening in Charles. They've already happened. I see it down there. I see the expansion of real estate, see condos, apartments, whatever, townhomes everywhere. But I don't see any sidewalks. The traffic is always terrible. So somebody didn't think about infrastructure. And I know if they didn't think about infrastructure, they didn't think about the impact that all that housing is going to have on schools. So are y'all headed in the same direction? Well, we can get on that later. You want to introduce yourself. My theory is y'all headed in the same direction that Prince George's County is in now, because they have crowded schools too, and that defeats the purpose. So I want you to introduce yourself, tell us your vision, how you got in this race.
So my name is Jason Henry, and I'm a candidate for the Charles County Board of Education in District 2. Now, I'm not new to this. I ran for the Board of Education in 2010, and I was labeled as a troublemaker because I spoke the truth. And of course, the current people that were on the school board and running for the school board did not look like me. And I was advocating for students that looked like me. And so they went around and said, oh, stay away from Jason, he's trouble. But I was talking about the high rate of suspension, expulsion, detention of Black and brown students in 2010. You know, and I had this information from the Maryland juvenile justice system. So it's not like I'm making up a story and pulling stuff from the sky. I'm talking about the facts, and I'm talking about how can we address this. And nobody wants to address those issues. Everybody thinks everything is fine, and you know there's no problem. We at the time we were paying our superintendent. He was the 5th highest in the DC region. He was number 5 on the list, just under Prince George's, Montgomery, and Fairfax County. Mind you, now Charles County has 26,000 students, and we're paying this man over $300,000 a year.
Whoa.
And his 5 deputies were making good 6 figures. And so I was like, why are we not reallocating the funds for the teachers and the classrooms? So, you know, I'm a troublemaker because I want to speak the truth. So if that means I'm going to speak the truth, well, I'm going to do that every day and twice on Sunday.
That's right.
So I concur with Ms. Jackie said, what the chairman said, and what Mr. Eugene said. You know, I'm in it because we need to support not just the Black and brown students, but all students. Most schools, they only, for some reason, the guidance counselors only focus on college and military. But what about the trade? What about the trade and apprenticeships? You know, we need to expand the students' ideas of what they can do with their future, because if they are successful in life, the economy and the community benefits. No one benefits when our students follow the path of the crib to the prison pipeline. It all costs us way too much money. But if we focus on education and having these students, when they finish high school, they're successful in life, everybody benefits. So again, I concur with everyone else said, and I encourage everybody to visit my website, electjasonhenry.com.
All right. Okay. So I guess the value of this discussion is with hopes of connecting else, because obviously y'all see the value of the school board in this election. It's a down ballot election. I know I'm sorry, Camille Khaleesi, she's not on yet. Sorry, she's not here. She could tell you what happened in Calvert County with them trying to just hire a superintendent. They told me it was like January 6th down there when they revealed that they had 2 finalists for the job, and both of them were African American, and they say the white people lost their minds. And then they went into full action to try to derail it, and that's how the NAACP got involved. I know that the same type of footprint has been paved in Howard County, and I'm sure it's in Washington County. I don't know about the activity in Charles, and I would invite any of the conservatives to come to Baltimore City anytime, any day of the week. But do you see this type of activity or targeting of these seats in any of these counties at all?
Well, I can go for Charles County. Charles County, they choose people to uh, get along. They will go the route of the least aggressive or the least um, knowledgeable candidates, the ones who agree with what the superintendent and the staff that supports the superintendent. They will pick those candidates because they don't want to change. I always say, um, in our central office over at our Board of Education, there's a lot of people making good money with doing the bare minimum. And when you only do the bare minimum, majority of the time, the students of colors are the ones that are impacted, and it's always a negative impact.
Mhm.
Every time they put a policy out, they figure out a way where it will impact the students of color. And so that's what we have to change. We have to change that. And until we do that, we are going to always have this conversation and always have this struggle.
Well, I know in Howard County, we have
So
8
what about
people.
you? Go ahead.
Yeah, we have 8 people running. Um, but as they targeted the school system in Fairfax County, I think everyone woke up to, oh, that stuff works. And so people decided to run who are absolutely against any progress of any kind for anybody. There's this feeling of, being threatened by the idea of becoming a minority. And I think it has people in an alarm state. And so folks are fighting to maintain the majority. And so in doing that, they will jump on any bandwagon if it means that they're going to be in the majority. And so we've got candidates who are, some are just blatantly saying what they are against, and others are saying things like, let's get back to traditional education. Well, when you talk to me about getting back and tradition, those are kind of dog whistle words. And the people who hear that know it. But the challenge that I have is that our people, Willie, is that we are not aware of the power of the primary election. We wait until November. Most people thought, oh, well, I'll vote for you in November. I said, wait, I got to get to November. And so because of the redistricting behind the census, our primary elections have been thrown off. But even before that, people didn't know to pay attention to primary elections. And this is a pivotal election. This can change. The election in Howard County can change the course of education for a long time. Who is elected as the county representative, the county executive, can change the course of the county for a long time. And so we can't sit by and not pay attention to the primary. I just had to call the Board of Elections because they had they didn't have my mail-in ballot in the correct date. And so I asked the young lady, because she gets all of that stuff. She said there's a lot of apathy right now. People are not paying attention to the primary election. And just like we slept through Trump, we slept through Bush versus Gore, because they weren't the perfect candidate. I mean, I've never really voted for anybody that I 100% backed, but I wanted my vote to count. And because people sat home, people like us sat home and said, I don't like Hillary. I didn't like her either. But did you want the other? And look what we got. Now we've got a packed Supreme Court that's going to be in place for 30 to 40 years. And there's nothing we can do about it, except we need to vote for legislators who understand the Constitution, who understand law, who can write laws that cannot be struck down by the Supreme Court, and who can, if necessary, change that Supreme Court with numbers. But we've got to pay attention, and we're not doing our job. I wanted to recommend this book, Willie, before I stop. The Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson. It is more important today than it was the day that it was written. We, as Black people, need to understand that we've got to stop fighting one another. And we've got to coalesce, even if we don't agree on every little point. We've got to coalesce around the need to get people in power who will stand for us and our progression. I'll stop.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Queen Jackie, King Jason, like y'all hit it on the nail. And that's something that we've been seeing out here in Washington County. We just hired a new superintendent, David Sofine, who was the former superintendent in Frederick County. And there was a lot of uproar, from our Republican side and for those who want things to stay the same. And I think that's what you begin to see is a lot of the pushback for those voices is that you have these strongholds that just want to hold on to things. They don't want things to change. And also with that is because they want to also control their money. Because, one of the things that gets held back in our Black community is funding, resources, and opportunity that starts right there in education. And so, education becomes political, and it shouldn't become political. We should just invest in education, but instead it becomes political. And so what I'm informing people is education doesn't just stop with the Board of Education. We also need county commissioners that's going to fully fund the Board of Education. Then along with that, you need to even go up the ladder and think about your House delegates that are able to set policy, your senators that's able to write down bond bills to bring in the money. Unfortunately, the people who want to hold our community back are the ones that's very well aware of this process. And so they try to put people in certain positions. And it's so sad to say, but my greatest opposition as I've been running for Board of Education has come from men that look like me, businessmen, in fact. And that's been a major problem in our community is you're fighting for change, but you have people fighting for their pockets and for money. And that money is not going towards our youth. And we're getting stuck in this cycle. And so you're seeing people continue to get the same funding to address the same need in our community year after year after year when we can really just go ahead and change it. And so when you see voices like us that are getting out here that are running, they become afraid because it's going to mess up everything that they used to do because we're actually about the people. I care about these kids. Like that's where my heart is. And so I'm willing to fight anybody that looks like me, that doesn't look like me. If you're not for our youth, then we have to stop. We have to stop you. We have to drive you out as well. You're part of the problem. And so when you're running for Board of Education, it becomes a greater scope now that you've put yourself on the forefront for, because now you have other opposition that's looking for you. We have 3 seats available for our Board of Education run, and we have 6 candidates. So we're automatically going through the primaries. But what I'm trying to inform people is that we have a lot of people running for county commissioner, and we need to make sure that we put in place those that are willing to fund education, those that are not just for business and profit reasons, but even with the NAACP, like we don't want to see our community continue to be exploited and people capitalizing off of it, because the main group that suffers is going to be our young children. And so once you get into that scope of education, you realize education, it doesn't just stop in the schools, it's in the streets. It goes all the way around. I work with young dudes that's locked up right now. I work with young people that's on the street. Education is all of that, because some of those ones that's out there, education gave up on. So some of those ones that's locked up, they need the education so that they don't continue to go into that cycle that was set up for them. And so it becomes frustrating when you're really fighting for your people and you have your own people that are fighting against you because their heart is unclean, as I call it. So we got to pray for the hearts of some of these people that, they begin to act right, because this is a very important year. And if we don't push forward, we will ultimately go back. If we're not building, it's decaying. So we have to drive this thing forward. If we're running this race, continue to run it, continue to voice it, continue to fight for it, because the kids is dependent on it.
Brother Michael Johnson, what are your barriers in Baltimore City? I know you mentioned this earlier. This is the first year that Baltimore City has an elected school board, and you were on that fight and you've pretty much been on the front lines for a while. So what are your challenges now, and what you need to do to get elected?
Well, it's interesting that on a big scale, statewide, this is the last time that I think in my contemporary time that I'm going to see Black power at its fullest.
Mm.
This is an opportunity that we could walk away with a Black governor, a Black controller, a Black attorney general, and all the way down the line for Chairman Fred, Jackie McCoy, Jason Henry, me and myself. The problem that we have in Baltimore City, because I don't have all of the overbearing racial problems that is held in the 3 municipalities that I'm speaking with. But in Baltimore City, what we have is the good old boy network. It's, well, Michael, don't rock the boat. Yeah, we know the school system's been a piece of crap for 30 years, but don't rock the boat. So what they do is it's 8 people in a race. I think if someone else said it's 8 people in the race. 4 of us will go to November. But there are 2 candidates that's being pushed by the establishments that are just like the people that's on the school board today. Yesterday at the forum with the National Action Network, I mean, you couldn't get anything other than all of our kids are crazy. They all need psychiatrists. They all need RFPs. The parents ain't nothing. The parents ain't doing that. But no one says how we got here. And so here we have this opportunity for greatness in the state of Maryland that you couldn't imagine. I can't find 5 state senators in the whole state of Maryland that's supporting the brother Tim Adams, regardless of his skills, regardless of the fact that he's number 10 in Black enterprise. He can count, that he got crippled, he got maimed, and yet he still was able to got 300 Black people primarily that are running his company. But we have this lady who has been a state senator for 7 years in Fells Point, where there's nothing but bars and drunks at, and yet she's the number 1 person. And in the school board, what we have is we have 2 people who haven't been in Baltimore 5 years. Neither one of them have ever had children in the system. One is from Arizona, and the other one's from some parts of India. And so here they are into this community, and yet what was the insulting part yesterday during the forum, and I had to be me, is when the Indian lady said, well, sometimes people come up to me and don't know what I am. And I told her, you the same thing I am. All you got to do is get pulled over by the police, get stopped in the grocery store or anything. Then you will know exactly who you are. But the mere fact that we have folk that look like us, because in Baltimore City, it's the reverse, really, what the chairman, Fred, Jackie, and Jason is talking about. Totally different. Because we've had so-called control. But when you look at, when I started peeling back more and more, one thing I found out is that the board has always been connected to John Hopkins and his research arm. And all of this millions of dollars, you got to understand, we have a $1.62 billion budget, bigger than 15 countries in the world. And we got 78,000 students. Now, I was in school when we had 110, and I was in school when school was tough and it was harder. But now what we have, and I am as far right as you probably can go, but I have know that there are so many people that are in the system who's pimping the system in order for them to do, or nonprofits to make money. Because you cannot say with a $1.62 billion budget and and $1.5 billion budget just to rebuild the schools, which you and I know, Willie, they're doing in Baltimore City. They're rebuilding the schools. Of course, they're not building the school with solar paneling, but that's another conversation when you got 21st century schools. But what we are doing is we're still educating our children in a way for failure. As the sister was saying, and obviously I comment all the time on the miseducation of Black children, because I'm not saying that George Washington wasn't a good president. I'm just saying he had 300 slaves. So somewhere along the line, my fight is not the fight is not a fair fight, because I'm being banked on all sides, and that's cool with me. I love it. I like shit like this, and all due respect to everybody on it. Come on, bring it. You know me, Willie. I don't care about nothing like that. I've been in races before where I've lost, but I've never lost badly. But I've lost. But the problem has always been, it's not that I was wrong. It's just that I understand this is about the children. See, because if you don't love our children, you shouldn't be in this race. I don't care where you are. If you don't love our children, if you don't understand that you're the ancestor next time, you're the ancestor right now, what are they going to be saying about Jackie, Chairman Fred, and Jason, and Michael, and Willie? So I have a responsibility. I have a responsibility for the ancestors that came before me. And so even though I don't have that same struggle in front of me, but behind the screen, the spook that's sitting behind the door, the one that's writing the checks to the people that are running for office, some of my delegates and some of my senators who don't understand that we are at the lowest. 30 years ago, real quick story. 30 years ago, Baltimore City was the sixth best education, 32 years ago, sixth best education system in the country. 30 years before that, Dunbar and Douglas and Baltimore City had more out of town black children going to their schools because people from around the country were going to those schools because that was the best schools. Coming from Howard County, coming from Charles County, coming from all the county to go to. Why? Because a lot of times there's only high schools in the area for black folks. But that's the legacy that we come from. And then we sit around and we're arguing about squeegee kids washing car windows, even though the car industry has had automatic windshield wipers for 36 years. And then we justify by saying these children need the money. No, there's a lot of teaching going on in our system. It's just very little learning. And that's because people cannot identify with Jason and Jackie and Chairman Fred and Willie and me. Because all they see is, because I've heard it throughout this campaign and closing, all I've heard them say is what's wrong with our children. And I always say, ain't nothing wrong with our children. There's something wrong with the adults.
Right.
All right.
Like in Charles County, over 70% of our teachers are white females from Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons, Pennsylvania, from rural Pennsylvania, and they come
we get
down.
Boston, we get Massachusetts.
Yeah, but they come down to Charles County because you have to remember, Charles County, this is where they come to get their teaching experience. So they're fresh out of college. And Charles County now, majority minority. So our schools are overwhelmingly minority students.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have not had life experience with people of color, how are you going to relate to them? How are you going to teach them? And that's what we have in Charles County. And they come down here, they spend their 2 years, and then they roll out and go someplace else.
Now.
And so, so we always have that revolving door for educators because of what happens in Charles County. Now, like Mr. Eugene said, Charles County, our commissioners have to, by law, they have to give half of the revenue each year to education. Last year, it was over $200 million went to education. Over $200 million in Charles County went to education. But the teachers are still spending their money out of their paycheck to buy school supplies for their children. Because the way our system is set up, each principal has their budget. And anything outside their budget, the principal don't sign off on it. The teachers, they have to go into their own pockets. With a $200 million budget, why are we doing this? 1 year, Charles County Public Schools put over $10 million in their rainy day fund. But yet, they canceled the activity bus for the kids in my district who live 40 minutes from school in some of the rural areas of the county. You cancel the activity bus that only costs $200,000 a year. but yet you're putting $10 million in your rainy day fund. And you know the students that live in the rural area look like me.
Right. So, so that's what's the policy in Howard County for the money that goes into the budget? Is it 60% of the budget?
It's approximate. It's not exactly 60. It's close to 60, but yeah, 60% of the county budget is education. Nearly, just about.
Yeah. So I guess that's a common practice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the Baltimore City schools are pretty much governed by the state, correct?
Mm-hmm.
But the city provides a $200 million budget adjustment for the city. I mean, I cannot comment on how cash rich the city of Baltimore school system is when you have, I think the comment was 21% of the budget. 21% of the budget, people are making over $150,000.
These are principals?
Not just the principals, I'm talking about North Avenue
Okay.
and everywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
It averages out right now, and not to dictate too much of conversation, our budget right now averages out to almost $18,000 per child. But that's before they hit the dough in the schools. And once it's the schools, whatever it costs. I mean, Baltimore has the biggest problem because no one is auditing no one.
Yeah.
No one's auditing our children to see how well they're doing. We don't have continuing education at 2:30, 3 o'clock. Some of these leaders are running out of the buildings. You know, it was not uncommon, and I know I'm gray hair and no hair, but it wasn't uncommon back in the day for schools didn't close at 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. And so when all of this money is coming out the door, and when the questions during the audit that I'm going to ask for on day one is an audit, and I know that the state is already asking for one. And I guess to go back to your original point, the city budget contributes $200 million, but our overall budget is $1.62 billion. Billion with a B. And yet, yes, I hear teachers, may complain, but I don't know, I guess because I've been around teachers all my life, I've got school teachers and all through my family, I always say I just check out the parking lot, because, you're not going to find Studebakers and stuff in the car. I mean, we have to be able to say, what are we trying to give our children? And if we're not going to give our children nothing, that's why I don't have any problem with, we should be not letting the governor let children be able to go to private and charter schools. We don't leave them in a failing school. I'm just as guilty of the crime if I leave a child in a failing school than allowing a child to go to Gilman or whatever who would take them, even though I know there's not a lot of management at these private schools. But I'm sorry, we got some horrible schools. We're talking about 70% of our high school students are not even reading at the 6th grade level. That's what we got coming out of the door. Why do you think Amazon didn't stop in Baltimore, didn't stop in Prince George's County, didn't stop within an area and went to Northern Virginia? Because of the schools. Why is crime bad? Crime is bad very simple, because if you got a good school, you ain't got crime.
That's right.
So let me get this right. You think the Amazon skipped Baltimore and Prince George's County because of the education?
Because of the education models that were there, because these are not people that are working in fulfillment centers. These are not the warehouse people that's coming in town. These are, if you've been to Fairfax lately and seen how they're sprucing it up and making it work, these are people that have got the technology. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not suggesting, and let me make myself clear, I'm not suggesting that our children are not capable to being able to do what they got to do. But companies read the bottom line. And they see in the bottom line that Baltimore City is number 24th municipality out of 24 municipalities, and that Prince George's County is 23. I don't know if I'm going to invest $15 billion in an area where I can't get a student to even be able to read. We got to fix that at the school level.
I never thought about that. And that speaks, I guess, to what I kind of think that we all need to be focused on is what technology looks like moving forward and how we're preparing young people for this the cyber experience that we're all going through. And what is, I guess, to each, we got 10 more minutes. Does anyone have a vision on how we connect the dots on that type of access at the school board level?
I know this, that it's not enough to just give students a computer. Howard County gave every student a computer during COVID. And the question is, where is the preparation and the training for the children to use these tools? Where's the preparation and the training for the teachers to know how to facilitate the use of the tools? Where's the support for the educator who's trying to get the attention of a child who's on their phone and they're afraid to tell them to put it away? So technology is not, availability of technology is not so much the issue in Howard County. It's the managing and the effective use of the technology that I see as the issue. It's not only for the student, but the educators and the parents. They're expecting parents to know how to manage these education systems. We've got this thing called Canvas. It's a learning platform, but you, depending on the parent, you may not know how to navigate it. Depending on the educator, you may not know how to effectively navigate it. So having the tools is not the issue. It's how are we effectively using it and holding people accountable for the use of it and helping families to effectively utilize it at home. Kids are just, left to their own devices. And that's why we can't get their attention in class, because we don't know how to effectively balance technology with what needs to happen in the classroom. We can't do everybody line up into straight rows like they did in the factory days. We're not in the factory days. We've got to adjust and learn how to work collaboratively in groups. And I don't know that we are doing that very well. There's a lot of talk about it, but where's the accountability and the training that needs to happen in order for it to be effective?
So, Chairman Fred, what do you see as a solution?
I mean, I look at technology as a supplement. When I was in the classroom, if you're not a good teacher, I mean, the technology and the different things that you're using, it doesn't matter. Your kids are going to use it for whatever they want to. And then also with that is, I was a science teacher. So, there's so many programs that you can use that you can, improvise or include in your classroom. But you also have some teachers that go above where they want to use 6 different programs in one class, and so your kids is going from platform to platform, and so it depends on the environment that you create. Like if you're an engaging teacher, then the technology that you use, you're going to be able to keep your kids in track with it, But unfortunately, we focus on the technology and not the environment that we're creating in the classroom. And so if we're not inclusive, if we're dismissive, if we're only focusing on disciplining kids, all that technology and everything, it just truly does not matter for the children. And so for me as a board, I want to focus on first with teachers and creating that inclusive environment where they're able to address the diversity in their classroom and all of that diversity feel like they're being heard and they feel comfortable, because that will lead into an inclusive learning environment. Now the kids actually want to learn, they're actually listening to what you're saying. But if you skip the technology and everything, then you're missing the root of what we need to be addressing. And so I think that goes across the board for all the classrooms, and like I said, during COVID, that's when you saw that huge gap with technology and different things, because I felt like kids were thrown into it, parents and guardians were thrown into it. And then outside in the community, some communities were lacking in the technology that they actually needed to, facilitate the classes. And so the technology exposed a lot of the learning issues that we're having in the classroom. But my focus is to make sure that we're changing the environment of our classrooms to make it inclusive for our students.
What about you, Brother Henry?
Well, to piggyback off what the chairman said, in my district, District 2, it's rural, so we have a large portion of students who don't have high-speed internet. So how are you going to learn when they were virtual when you don't have high-speed internet? So what they did was they turned the elementary school into a hub, an internet hub. And so in the evenings when parents got off from work, they were sitting in the parking lot in their cars while their students were on their laptops doing their work because they were using the Wi-Fi from the school. And
Yeah.
we are this close to the nation's capital, but this is what we're doing in
Yeah.
our education system. This is unacceptable. How are we going to and inspire our young people to learn when these are the conditions that they have to work in?
Yeah, that was a common reality during quarantine, because some students, I heard stories about a child being at Dunkin' Donuts because his mother had to work, and that was the only place they could had high-speed internet. So it played out. But we have to push the envelope on that too. Hope that's a part of everybody's campaign to assure access to young people. But we still have this issue of getting exposure or access to technology early enough. And this is something we're going to be working on in NAACP as long as I can breathe. And that's the fact that, as Ms. Jackie said earlier, that the devices is one thing, but the other piece is the access so they can learn coding, they can learn hacking, they can learn and understand robotics and machine learning, artificial intelligence. That's not there. I don't think that can happen at the schools, and it can't happen early enough for a lot of reasons. That's something we've got to push for. Howard County, we were unfortunately found out that not only because we tried to push them to get the devices before they were forced to get them, they wouldn't do that. But what happened in the end is they got them, but when they got them, they didn't have any plans to do any type of pipeline to learn coding as you went along. Because my belief is that if we can do this same mess with every sport you can name has a season, and every sport you name, every time you go, your skills improve. I just believe we can do the same thing with technology, and that should be the goal.
Agreed.
So we got 3 minutes. We can do outtakes. You can tell us your website. Tell them your website. Tell them how they can give you that money, so that y'all can finish this campaign out strong. I think y'all got 2 more weeks.
Mm-hmm.
No.
So Jackie, you're the first one.
More than anything, people need to vote. Tell your friends, tell everybody over 18. Too late to register, but if you're a registered voter and you know you're not going to be in town for the holiday, for July 19th, you can call them. I will give you the number and ask them to send you a mail-in ballot. You can go up to the Board of Election and get the mail-in ballot. But please do not sleep this primary election. You have got to vote. I'm pushing for Westmore. I'm telling you, I am all down ballot, all the way through. Now, in Howard County, just because you're Black doesn't mean you understand what's going on. And I think that's pretty much everywhere. So just because a person is brown or Black doesn't mean that they understand or they have the prerequisite skills. So I'm not saying that. Vote for me, for sure. But make sure that you vote for the person that you know stands for what you want for your children. I am here for every child. But let me tell you, I'll take it to the mat if a decision is made where we're left at a disadvantage. I don't use the word fight because that's the amygdala messes your head up, but I will advocate to the hilt to make sure that we all get what we need, that our children get the education that they deserve and that they need.
All right, brother.
And my website is JackieMcCoyBOE.com. Yeah, that's it.
Brother Michael Johnson.
Okay, real quick. It's Mike Go Johnson at yahoo.com. That's MIKEGO Johnson at yahoo.com. It's 2 things that we've got to make sure that we do on the first swing if we get in. One is the fact that we need to have a meeting with all of the presidents of all of the universities in the state to tell us, what do we need to be teaching our children so they can get in your institution? And number two is to go to all of the businesses in the area and say, what do we need to be teaching in order for our children to get jobs, even if they have to go get some additional education? And that's what our curriculum is. So I would appreciate if someone lives in Baltimore, who lives in Baltimore City, when the early voting starts July the 7th to the 14th, and then of course election day is the 19th, that you give me a chance and we'll go from there. And I just appreciate being in the room with these other folks. And I got folks that where you are, even you, Jason, I'm going to make sure that I give them a call as soon as I finish this conversation.
All right. Chairman Fred.
Yeah, peace, everybody. I enjoyed this conversation. Queen Jackie said something earlier about, everybody ain't really, all Black folk don't really know Black folk issues and different things, so they may not really be a part of it. I always go by all skin folk ain't your kin folk. And,
every brother ain't a brother.
I'm telling you, man. And, just because we put a Black person in office don't mean that that's true representation either. But I'm telling you that I am actually that representation for our community. It's always cliche to say you're the voice or you want to be that voice, but I do want to be one of those voices that continues to drive that force, going forward of what we need for our communities, to speak for all of our children, because our humanity is wrapped up in yours and yours is wrapped up in ours. So we all had to be able to come together for that aspect. And it starts with education. Education is the major foundation for how everybody in this world is going to turn out, what they're going to achieve, who they're going to become, and what legacy they're going to leave when it's all said and done. So I'm asking for people to vote for legacy, because that's where it's going to start today. This is the People for Fred Chavis. You'll find me on Facebook. I'm going to look each of you up as well to make sure that we push the support for you all. And again, I appreciate this conversation. And let's keep forging forward. Make the ancestors happy, because that's what's needed.
That's right.
Brother Henry.
So electjasonhenry.com. And one of the things that I have pledged, and it is on my campaign literature, it says, my pledge to you is that I will always do what's in the best interest of the community and the student, even if it means I must stand alone, because that's what it's all about.
All right. That's going to be the closing note. I want to thank y'all very much for coming on board. Thank you for your commitment to the children. Thank you for your commitment to believing in yourself enough to run these campaigns. And I also thank you for your commitment to the NAACP. And, that struggle that fight will never end. So we're going to work with y'all when y'all get in office, and we will work together to make this thing better when it's all said and done. So thank y'all. Thank you again for your time, and good luck with your campaigns in the next few weeks. Peace.
Absolutely. Peace and love, everybody.
Thank you. Beautiful. Excellent job.